Thank you very much, dear students. I'm your tutor for investigative technique, POLT IT21. I'm hereby to present you this presentation for your preparation for the examination and for your understanding. Dear student, you are want to concentrate much in your study guide. This just gives you the specific points that you can look at during your preparation for the examination. My name is Alex Lizazi. Introduction. We start with the Unit 1, Theories of Forensic Investigation. What do we want to understand about this point? In this point, what is included in the point is that physical evidence and forensic investigations, type of forensic evidence found on the crime scene, their usage to link different components of the investigation, value of forensic investigation. That means at some point, when you arrive at the scene, you will have to find some physical evidence left by the perpetrator of the crime. Those are the things that you have to look when you arrive at the scenes. And then this concept gives you the way how you go about it. If we are to discuss or to define what is physical evidence, it is any object, mark, impression, smell or sign, large or microscopically small, which might help the investigator understand what happened and lead to identification of the criminal. So physical evidence is something that you can use. It's a tool, it's a technique that you can use to identify or to reconstruct the crime scene. It provides you with a link between a crime and a victim, perpetrator and the location where it occurred. It is more powerful with the ability that testimonial evidence defining what happened at any crime, it is tangible and solid. While assessing the testimonial evidence depends on the jury to find witness if or she is honest or reliable. Forensic investigations. This term also provides us with a technology that has become helpful in the sense that most microscopic evidence collected at a crime scene can be identified to an individual. For example, a boot print to a particular shoe, a flake of paint to a particular make and model of a car. That denotes to forensic investigation dealing with all types of physical evidence recovered on the crime scene, which helps to resolve the crime. Types. It might be a step where a person stepped his foot, touches where you touch, footprints, fingerprints where you touch, paint scratches, hair, fiber from clothing, broken glass, tool marks left behind, blood and semen left behind, even unconsciously. Value. What is the value of this forensic investigation? They are factual evidence, because if you find the physical evidence on the scene, it's unarguable. It represents what happened. So it's unlike someone who gives evidence by testimony, because that is where the problem is. The judge have to assure himself or herself that the particular witness is providing is honest or dishonest. So that is the value of the forensic investigation. It cannot be wrong. It cannot prejudice itself. It cannot be wholly absent, only if it's interpreted in an error way. Only human failure to find it. Study and understand it can diminish its value. So that is the point. When we talk about study and understand it can diminish its value, it means if a person investigating the matter, interpret it wrongly, or understand it differently, it will diminish the value of such an evidence, and then it might not be acceptable in court of law. Furthermore, we have some classification of physical evidence, and it's classified into 4 categories, which is transient evidence, conditional evidence, pattern evidence, and the trace transfer evidence. What is transient evidence? By nature, it's temporarily and easily changed or lost. For example, odor, temperature, these things can be lost just within some minutes, some seconds, some hours, depending on the object that bringing the result of such a condition, or perishable items such as snow, food, sand, stain on objects. Conditional evidence. Conditional evidence resulting from an event or action, it can be easily lost if not documented immediately. Examples, it's lightning conditions. If you arrive at the scene, you will be able to identify whether there was a light on, or it was dark, or it was whatever situation was available. So it's necessary for investigating officer to document whatever kind of evidence that can assist him or her in the investigation to deliver on the correct information. So that is the conditional evidence. Pattern evidence produced by contact between one person and another, person or object. Example, burn patterns, shoe prints, fingerprints, injury patterns, blood spatter. So this pattern evidence can be produced by contact. For instance, if you become in contact with fire, the burn will remain on your body. If the shoe become in contact with soil, wherever the surface, it will remain a print over there. Same applies to fingerprints and the injuries inflicted on a person, and the blood spatter that spilled on the floor or on the surface or on individual or on the cloth or any materials. So that is the pattern evidence. Trace and transfer evidence. The classic types. The result of physical contact between one person or object and another. Examples, paint, glass, soil, blood, bodily fluid, gunpowder residues. So these are ballistic investigations, where you can identify, for instance, if a female and a male become in contact, a certain evidence, for instance, the hairs, will remain on any other person, or you come in contact with a paint of the car or in accident, any paint will remain on the car that were involved in accident. So that is the trace or transfer evidence, because it's transferable from one object to another object, or you can trace it from one object to another object. Furthermore, in the classification again, we still have evidence by its general nature. So in general nature, we mean it's biological, which is generally as it is. And then you have chemicals, man-made things, physical, which you can see by naked eyes, miscellaneous, which is you identify voices, and use polygraph, which you can just perhaps assume, but depending on the equipment you use in such assumptions. So under biological, you have blood, semen, and saliva, body fluid, hair, bone, tissue, urine, pollen, botanical, insects. And on chemical, you have fibers, chemicals, glass, soil, gunpowders, metal, and other. On physical, you have fingerprints, firearm itself, the objects themselves. So Miscellaneous, you have laundry marks, voice analysis, polygraph, photograph. All those are classification of evidence by its general nature. So in the exam, dear students, you must be careful on these two aspects because they sound similar, but the questioning or the verb that will be used in the question might be different to describe what type of classification of evidence is required. So students must pay attention on this content. It's very important. Furthermore, we go to the value of forensic investigation. What is the value of forensic investigation? Their role of physical evidence. Linkage theory, which is the same associative evidence. Interpretation value of evidence. So those three aspects are very important to consider. And under interpretation value of evidence, what does it interpret? It's very important. The office at crime scene assess the scene and identify any evidence with value to investigation and gather that evidence. So the interpretation value of evidence is that when the evidence is collected, it goes to the assessor who will assess, or to the forensic department, which is responsible to assess the evidence and identify its value to the investigations. If it's important, and then it's recorded and submitted to the investigator who will present it to the court. The scientist analysis, the sample which have been recorded. The result progress and passed to the investigating officer who makes an interpretation of the value of the evidence to the case at hand. Finally, the court where the evidence is presented remains with the prerogative of a judge and the jury to make their own determination on the value of the evidence and what it means to the case. There are certain principles to follow. The basic principles of physical evidence analysis includes the following: comparison and identification, class versus individual characteristics, the role of observation and the perceptions, the importance of context, the importance of crime scene reconstruction. What is the importance of crime scene reconstruction? Firstly, Ross Gardner listed 4 underlying principles of crime scene reconstruction, which is superposition, how you find the evidence. The way it's found, it must be recorded. It's very important. Continuity, the movements. How did it happen? How was the victims found? And what happened from there? Chronology, it's similar to what I just said, and the relationship. So the linkage between the evidence that were found to the perpetrator and the victim. Crime scene reconstruction is carried out using the principles of scientific methods. So that's why scientific methods is very important, because it's the useful tool or technique that can be used to reconstruct the crime scene. Potential issues. There are certain things that are very important when you arrive at the scene. The first thing is to preserve the originality of the evidence or the scene. Keep an open mind. So as an investigator, your mind must remain open. Contamination. The contamination must be guarded against, where if the investigating officer arrives at the scene, must make sure that movements, unnecessary movements, is restricted. to avoid contamination. Even in the way of collecting the evidence, the investigating officer must wear the prescribed clothing to avoid air contaminations. Anything that will be contaminated, it will be deemed, it will be challenged in the court of law, and then it will not help the investigating officer. Unit 2, basic elements of forensic science. Here we are dealing with the basic elements of forensic science. Introduction, what do we want to understand about the basic elements of forensic science? First, forensic science, different disciplines, its different disciplines. Some pioneers, we will have to understand the pioneers of forensic science and their contributions, the main areas of forensic today, general work of forensic scientists, the value of forensic science brings to an investigation and ethical consideration. The definition of forensic science. The National Institute of Justice in USA explained or defined forensic science as follows: the application of sciences such as physics, chemistry, biology, computer science, and engineering to matters of law. The application of sciences such as physics, chemistry, biology, computer science, and engineering to matters of law. So that implies that the technology has evolved that, or has transformed to the point that physics, chemistry, biology, computers, engineering has been linked to the matters of law. Therefore, forensic sciences makes use of scientific technologies and methods to determine how crime was committed and by who, and what evidence is relevant to the crime. History of forensic sciences. The short history of forensic sciences began in China during the 6th century with their practice of legal medicine. In 1246, the book His Duan Yu, The Washing Away of Wrongs, was published in China, and it described, amongst other things, how to distinguish drowning from strangulation. Those two words means drowning in the river or in the water or in the swamp, from strangulation, where the person is strangled to death. It was the first recorded application of medical knowledge to the solutions of crime. So that's how it started. That is the historic of forensic science. Furthermore, it went, the original forensic scientists were self-taught, doctors and chemists with interest in specific areas of their field, which then could be applied to collecting and analyzing physical evidence in criminal cases. For example, Sherlock Holmes, a character who developed as forensic science knowledge was rapidly expanding. Arthur Conan Doyle wrote the Sherlock Holmes stories between 1886 and 1927. As many forensic fields were coming into being, the first fingerprint bureau opened in London in 1902. As time goes, forensic science evolved into its own discipline, and then as science and technology advanced, it evolved again into many subsections, all contained within the forensic science field. Each subsection made up of experts in their particular field, such as fingerprints, toxicology, chemistry, and DNA. The list of pioneers of the field of forensic science are as listed here, as you can read them for yourself. Those are names of individuals who played the role and their contribution that they provided to the science. Furthermore, we have areas of forensic science. Which areas are those? In the study guide, read and understand various departments of forensic laboratory. So those are very important for your understanding and for your knowledge, even for the examination. The Forensic Science Lab, the most and common accredited ISO, International Standard Organization 17025, consists of 5 elements as follows: scope, normative, reference, terms and definition, management requirements, and the technical requirements. Meeting a nationally or internationally recognized standards is a mark of competence and quality standards. So, National Forensic Institute of Namibia, NFSI, as of 23 June 1993, has 3 purposes or 4. It examines the crime scene, that is the first, physical evidence obtained from the crime scene, conducting research for those who are willing to do research regarding forensic investigation, and it is a multidisciplinary scientific research facility. So those are the importance of the National Forensic Institute of Namibia, which came to being as of 23 June 1993. Departments. The Namibian forensic is divided into the following departments: physical science, chemistry, biology, ballistics, documents, toxicology, evidence collections, computer forensics, forensic engineering. So what is physical science? Physical science is the department that tests glass to electronic equipments. Also assists in arson and fire scenes. Chemistry is testing blood, alcohol concentration, drugs, paint, explosive, accelerates, and propellants. Biology, DNA profiling, analysis of body fluids, comparison of hairs and fibers, identification and comparison of biological materials, wood and plant matters. Ballistics, examination of firearms, bullets, casing and other firearm-related items, testing of gunpowder residues, and assist with wound, ballistic, and trajectories. Documents, analyzes handwritings, paper, ink, intended impression, banned documents, and examination of scene of crime documents, such as checks and passports. Toxicology, body fluids and organs to determine the presence of toxins, poisons, and drugs. Evidence collection, especially trained individuals who are expert at scene examination and evidence recovery. For instance, in Namibia, we have the Scene of Crime Division, which is responsible to attend to serious crimes such as murder, suicide, and rapes. They take pictures, they are trained to do all those kind of investigations. Computer forensics, examination of any type of digital evidence. Forensic engineering, conduct failure analysis, accident reconstruction. This is responsible with the accident. If the car accident occurs, these people will be called to go and draw some sketch plans and everything, reconstructing the incident. Causes and origin of fire, explosions, inspection of mechanical objects. Namibia's forensic laboratory was inaugurated by His Excellency Dr. Gengop on the 16th April 2020 in Windhoek. As you can see, there are below pictures. That is an indication of our standardized forensic laboratory. Role of forensic scientists. Two specific areas that they are looking at. They analyze the physical evidence, provide expert testimony in court. Those are the two roles of forensic scientists. Ethics in forensic science. Forensic scientists must remain impartial and report their findings based on science, obtaining information in a way that satisfies the scientific requirements of validity, reliability, accuracy, and precision. As we heard from the beginning that any evidence collected, it must explain what happened. Therefore, that is an ethical viewpoint. It must be recognized. It must be on a standard information that cannot be disputed. Examples of ethical misconduct within forensic investigation. What are those unethical behaviors that can occur during the investigation? One, planting evidence that points to the defendant. An investigating officer might put something to incriminate the defendant. Collecting evidence without warrant. If you are a police officer investigating an offense, you have to obtain a search warrant in order to collect those evidence from the court. Falsifying laboratory examination. There are those who are unethical and they falsify laboratory examinations, which is giving the wrong information without examining. Ignoring evidence at a crime scene. Reporting on forensic tests not actually done. Fabricating scientific opinion based on individual interpretation. Examining evidence when not qualified to do so. Extending expertise beyond one's knowledge. Using an unproved methodology. Overstating an expert opinion by using terms of unfamiliar to jury. Failing to report a colleague, superior, or subordinate who engages in any of the previously listed activities to proper authority. So all those are unethical behavior. Student, you must take care of those kind of attitudes. Unit 3, scientific methods validation. How do we validate the scientific methods? Introduction. In validating this, we will find the following 4 ideas. Scientific approach to crime investigation. How was the crime approached? Induction and deduction. How you evaluate your evidence. Subjectivity and objectivity. Scientific methods. Those are the 4 scientific method validation that we will find in our definition and in our explanation. Definition of science. What is science? Study is the study of the world and try to understand and find out why things happen as they do. Examples: physical, biological, social, from the time of formation of the universe to the stage of human intellectual and emotional development to the migratory patterns of butterflies. So all those, that is the point of science. You want to know everything that happens around you. It's about the origin, the current, and the future. Scientific methods. What is the scientific methods? The validation. By observation, you observe. Ask the questions, define the problems. Form a hypothesis. Collect data. Test hypothesis. Form conclusion. Aspects of science. Induction and deduction, as we mentioned from the introduction. Objectivity and subjectivity. causality and correlation. What caused that and how is it linked to one another? Fallacies, the information that is defaulted. Application of scientific methods to forensic investigation. How do we apply scientific methods? By reconstructing the scene through forensic laboratory. That's how we apply scientific methods. Unit 4. Here we deal with the collections and the processing and packaging of forensic evidence. Introduction, we have collection, processing, packaging, crime scene as the source of potential information, protection of evidence to ensure its admissibility in court. The process of forensic investigation has 4 critical factors. Now, recognition, the availability of evidence. When you arrive at the scene, you recognize the evidence. Collection. And then you collect the evidence that you have recognized. Evidence must be collected and packaging using correct methods. Testing. After you have collected the evidence, testing must be correctly. It must be tested correctly. Presentation. Then you present the evidence, must be presented correctly and clearly in court. So those are the 4 critical factors in the process of forensic investigation. Basic crime scene examination. Investigation of crime scene requires knowledge, skills and tools, methodical approach, flexibility and coordinated effort. This can be broken down into several components. 1, assessing. 2, observing. 3, documenting. 4, searching. 5, collecting. 6, processing or analyzing. Those are the several components of crime scene examination. Stages of crime scene examination. What are the stages? First, you arrive at the scene as the first response. Secondly, securing the scene. Those 2. Scene integrity. 3. Scene safety. 4. Specific hazards. 5. Personal protective equipment. 6. Bioterror hazards. 7. The preliminary survey. 8. 9. Searching. So that is the stages of crime scene examination. The arrival, securing the scene, scene integrity, scene safety, specific hazards, personal protective equipment, bioterror hazards, the preliminary survey, searching. The rest, the students can explore more. In searching, I will concentrate on searching now. In searching, search areas such as location, point of entry and exit, appliances and utilities, ashtrays and trash cans, clothing, furniture. 5 basic search patterns. We have spiral search, line search, grid search, zone search, and point-to-point search. Those are very important for you, dear students, as you grow in your career as a police officer. Documentation, very important. Whether it's in private or at the police or anywhere, documentation is very important. How do you document? 1, by notes, notification, arrival, description of scene, obvious evidence, description of a victim, crime scene investigation team. Another, narrative description, sketches, photography, the mass causality crime scene, critical thinking. Evidence collection, processing and packaging. Collection, light source, tape and lightning, gel filter, casting, tweezer, and paper folder, syringe swaps. That's how evidence is collected. Processing and packaging. Paper and paper bags, containers, tins, plastic, non-tamper evidence bags, evidence boxes, evidence tubes. Packaging protects personnel from possible hazards such as accidental firearms, biohazards, sharp objects, and exposure to mold. Furthermore, packaging protects the evidence from loss, contamination, cross-transfer, and deterioration. So that's very important. Processing and packaging is very important due to the above mentioned. Summary, do's and don'ts of packaging. See table below. Information documented on packaging. Evidence description. What do you have to provide? What documentation is needed? Evidence description, evidence source, chain of custody, unique identification number, what processing is needed, health hazards, required storage conditions. Those are the description, or those are the information required on the document packaging. Summary of do's and don'ts of packaging evidence. There is do's and don'ts. These, my dear students, you can read them for yourself. They are so straightforward that they are very clear. Don't completely seal the evidence. Don't leave any area unsealed. Completely seal the evidence. Don't leave any area unsealed. Choose the correct size of packaging. Don't try to fit too much in a small container. So those are the types of do's and don'ts. So you compare them. Unit 5, legal principles governing forensic sciences. What is the legal framework for these forensic sciences? Evidence. Two types of evidence, testimonial evidence and real evidence. What is testimonial evidence? Is oral testimony given under oath by witness. And what is real evidence? Is any object presented as evidence determined by the CPA Act 25 of 2004 under section 5.3. So that is the framework. And it's also appear in the Criminal Procedure Act 51 of 1977 with its amendment. Search warrant and seizure of evidence. We spoke about search warrant in the ethical consideration. So search warrant and the seizure of evidence, it's a legal aspect. Identification of evidence. Also, identification of evidence, it's a legal point. Discovery, a legal point. Testimony, a legal point. The expert witness giving evidence, all those, they are the testimony that we talk about. Namibian laws. Evidence, searches, expert evidence, they are part of Namibian laws. Unit 6, DNA evidence. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid, biochemical compound found in nucleus of every cell type of the body, and it carries genetic material. It is genetic code that defines every living things, whether it's a tree, whether it's a human being, whether it's a car. There's some genetic code that defines such an organism or such a thing, a living organism. 4 different types of nucleotides or bases which comprises DNA. So you have Artemis, which represented by A. Thymine, represented by T. Guanine, represented by G. And cytosine, represented by C. DNA samples, common see below table. You can check for yourself in the table as they identified with blood stain, semen liquid, with their milligram and cubic, whatever sizes required. So you can read for them on your own. Unit 7, trace evidence. Introduction. In trace evidence, we will find transferred from one individual or object to another, the process of analysis. It can provide valuable to an investigation, revealing links between people, places, and objects. Every contact leaves a trace. Collecting trace evidence at the scene. How do we collect trace evidence at the scene? Through tweezers, tape lift, vacuumed collection. Fibers, animal fiber, plant fiber, synthetic fiber, fiber analysis. Paint, household paint, automotive paint, comparison and analysis of paint evidence. Glass, analysis of glass evidence, the value of glass evidence. Other types of trace evidence, hair, soil, plant, and matter. The rest is yours, my dear students. Unit 8, footwear evidence. Footwear evidence, its introduction, it contains higher value of evidence. It's very important because it will link to a certain shoe. It is found at every crime scene. You find it at every crime scene. Can it be recovered easily? Shoe print can assist to construct the event of the crime. Identification of the perpetrator. 6 different methods for sole manufacturers. So, in that way, because every shoe has its own manufacturing sole, you find decutting, calendering rubber, compression molding, injection molding, slash molding, and creep rubber. Types of footwear impression left at the scene. What are those? Visible prints, plastic prints, latent prints. Plastic, 3D impression. Recovery methods, casting. 2D impression, visible 2D impression, latent 2D impression such as floors, glass, walls, doors, other objects. Recovery method for latent footwear evidence. Identification of footwear evidence, test impression, methodology, ACE, analysis, comparison, evaluation. That's how shoe identification is analyzed and compared and evaluated. Footwear impression as an aid to the investigation. Direction, it will show the movement, how the perpetrator and the accused and the victim were moving. Timing, moving through, such as weather, blood, sequencing. Class characteristics, such as sex, age, other information linkage. So the footwear impression as an aid to investigation can provide all those aspects. Direction, timing, class characteristic, and other information linkage. Questioned document evidence. Evidence from document. Analysis of handwriting, comparison of ink, guide to the evidence collection at crime scene and analyzed. Evidence from document refer to anything, signature and the handwriting. So the rest you can read them for yourself, dear students. They are very clear. Unit 10, fingerprints. The cornerstone of forensic identification of fingerprints and DNA. The history of fingerprints identification, its development as field, the concept fingerprints, how they are compared. So the rest, dear students, you can copy, they are so clear in the slide. Unit 11, safe custody of evidence. Introduction. The laid-down procedure in chain of custody. Documentation steps, the possibility of non-admissibility of collected evidence of trial. Safe custody of evidence should be considered by investigation. They are the critical aspects of investigation technique. Chain of custody, proper evidence, correctly sealed packaging, proper labeling, safe transportation, secure and safe storage, records of impression. Unit 12, crime scene wrap up. This is now the final stage where you wrap up the entire evidence. Ensure all evidence has been collected. It is safe to turn the scene back over to its owner after you have satisfied yourself. Finalizing the crime scene investigation deals with recheck of the scene, secondary check of the scene, check beyond the scene, on-site debriefing, conduct final survey, release of secure scene, formal debriefing. Unit 13, crime and data acquisition and management. This is where now you manage your data that you collected. It's very important. You can read it for yourself. It's very clear. Police intelligence. This is very important, dear students. Strategic intelligence and operational intelligence. What do we mean by strategic intelligence? Focus on long-term aims of law enforcement agencies. Review on current and emerging trends, opportunities for controlling action, threats to public safety and order. Development of counter programs, avenues for changes to policies, programs and legislation. Changes in the crime environment. Operational intelligence. What is this all about? Provides investigation team with hypotheses and information concerning specific elements of illegal operations of any sort. Information about specific criminal network, individual or group. So a good knowledge of operational intelligence is highly recommended. The process of intelligence gathering. The intelligence gathering is a cycle, intelligence analysis and organized crime. So those are the processes that are included in our investigative technique. So dear students, with that, I hope it will help you with your preparation for the examination. And remember, this is just a summary of a most important part that were picked by the tutor. The rest remain with you to read your study guide in full and have a better understanding with other helpful material. I thank you.